Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we have Bob Dykeman of Shadow Valley Outfitters. Bob, how you doing?
Hey, Jay, I'm doing real good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to chatting with you today. We've gotten an incredible amount of moisture in Arizona, and curious to get your take not only on the upcoming deer season with the applications being due here June 11th, but just to get your take on elk season and everything we've got coming up this fall.
No, sounds good. It's I think kind of like everybody else has said, I think it's going to be pretty phenomenal. We had another little rain here today in Chino Valley, in the Prescott area and stuff, and the strip got some moisture along with, unit 10 and 9 and 8 as well. So, it's, end of May, and we're still getting rains, which is pretty uncommon.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy to be still getting rain right now, and it looks like a few storms are stacked up. So, Bob, before we get into the podcast talking about hunting, let's back up a little bit and talk a little bit about your history of growing up hunting, fishing, being in the outdoors. I know you spent some time up in Alaska, I believe, on a commercial fishing boat, but give the listeners who haven't heard you already on the podcast, which I encourage the listeners to go back and listen to some of the episodes with Bob and his partner Pat McCarty and some of the Shadow Valley Outfitters guys on the podcast, but talk a little bit about your upbringing and what brought you to the point that you're at now.
Yeah, I was born and raised here in Prescott, Arizona. Currently live in Chino Valley with my wife and two awesome little baby boys. They're a year and a half and 6 months. So we got our hands full here. But born and raised in the woods, fishing and hunting and stuff with my dad and parents and camping every weekend and stuff. And actually started going to Alaska in 2006. And guided moose hunts up there and some bear hunts and some sheep hunts. And I actually started commercial fishing up there in the summers and actually still do that right now. So I'm kind of getting ready, finishing up work here around town and going up to Alaska probably around June 23rd, and usually up there for like 25 days or something fishing, and then come back and we get started on deer and elk and kind of all the fall hunting stuff. So, I quit guiding in Alaska in like 2011, I think, and started doing it down here for a couple of outfits, and just recently, I think this is going to be our 4th year. So I think 2016 was our first year kind of doing it ourselves, where Pat and I both quit, a couple operations that we were working with, and kind of went out on our own and tried to do it, a little bit differently than a lot of other guys. Is, not really worried about making money. We're just out trying to kill the best animals that we can and having fun and giving clients, kind of a more personalized camp and we have a lot of fun doing it. So it gets a little bit better and better each year, but looking forward to this year for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So with the Alaska fishing, where are you going roughly, and what are you fishing for, and how long do you do it for?
So we fish Bristol Bay, which is southwest Alaska, on a commercial gill netter. We run, a gill net that's about 1,200 feet long, 200 fathoms, and the boat gets put in the water, usually right around June 10th or so. And the captain, who's a real good friend of mine, he's up there, and a couple of guys on the crew are up there, and they're just kind of going through the motions, making sure everything's working good, motors are running good, all the hydraulics are working good. Do that for, they'll do that for like 10 days, to 2 weeks before I get there. I've kind of got a little seniority on the boat nowadays, and I think, this is going to be my 14th year doing it, I think. So, I kind of show up when the fish really start running, and that's, sockeye salmon. Once they really show up in big numbers is when I usually roll up there and fish for anywhere between 3 and 4 weeks, and then when the fishing kind of dies off, I head home and start hunting.
That's pretty awesome. I assume you encounter all sorts of weather out there on Bristol Bay.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough fishing, rough hours and stuff. But yeah, some days it's really nice. It'll be 70 degrees maybe, and flat calm, and but most days it's pretty windy, pretty chilly, maybe 50 degrees or so, 40 to 50 would be kind of an average day with some wind and and spitting rain or something. But never really rains super hard like what we get down here. It doesn't get those those big soaking monsoon storms, but more of that Pacific Northwest, just drizzle all day long or something. But Alaska, anybody that's been up there, they know that the weather can change from bad to good in an hour, and from really good to bad in an hour too. So you just never know what you're going to get and what the day will bring.
One of my favorite shows, I've literally watched every single episode, is The Deadliest Catch, obviously the crab fishermen. So I'm sure you see those shows and can relate to some of those struggles that they go through on and off the boat there, and that whole lifestyle and what have you.
Yep.
But it's just a crazy thing. It has similarities to guide life for big game guides as well. Whether you're guiding in Arizona, you're guiding in Mexico, and constantly on the run. So we share a lot of similarities. Although I watch some of those crab fishing sagas and just think, golly, I don't know that I'm that tough. I think that all the time. As you get older, being your 14th season, do you get where you're like, holy smokes, I'm not as young as I used to be?
Yeah, for sure. I'm 30. I just turned 34. So yeah, for sure. Not just up there, but man, even in town here working, and you wake up with an achy back or whatever. But I think I never really thought of it that way, like you just said, the similarities. But it's a grind. Just like hunting the strip for big deer or elk or wherever, Mexico, and fishing up there is just you got to be kind of mentally tough for those, for that fishing for sure. And just got to kind of get in the zone and grind it out. And same thing with hunting deer down here. More times than not, it's a grind. And if you can keep a good attitude doing it, those are the guys that are going to be real successful, in my opinion. Guys that get down after not seeing a deer or having a couple days, tough fishing, those are the guys that are going to quit early, kind of what I try and tell all the clients is, man, just be prepared mentally, because it's, some years it's going to be awesome. Maybe this will be one of them, where everything lines up and the rut lines up and everybody's healthy, all the does and cows are healthy, and so they're going to rut real hard or something. But man, you can't ever rely on that. So the guys that are mentally tough and mentally prepared for a grind will be the guys that are going to be successful.
Good stuff. Good advice. We're going to talk about deer. I want to ask you some stuff about elk first and foremost here. Obviously, with all the moisture, we're betting that elk antler growth is going to be good. Did you draw any tags yourself personally, and or where are you going to be hunting during the rut this year? Where are you spread out? Pat, you guys spread out, or where are you going to be?
We personally, me and the family, we didn't draw any tags. Pat's brother drew a tag up in 9. We've got a couple clients up in 9, so we're going to spend our rut in the archery hunt up there, and then most of the late hunts. We got a couple up in 7, and then quite a few in Unit 8. So that's kind of right in our backyard, which we like, and it's easy to scout, and we can spend a lot of time there scouting. So we'll be in 8 and 7 on the late stuff, and we have some 8 hunters on the early archery, and then 9 hunters as well. So looking forward to it. It should be, it should be a great year.
For sure. Let's talk about deer. We've got the June 11th deadline coming up for deer here in Arizona, and everyone's trying to figure out the best place, to use their points and to put in and apply. Talk a little bit about your guide service and the units that you guys like to hunt.
We do a lot of the general hunts just right around town here. 8, 10, 17A and B, 18B stuff. We'll do 19A. For guys that don't have a bunch of points and want to, just come and hunt deer. Those tags are relatively easy to draw, and guys can be pretty successful. With, again, they come in with realistic expectations. Killing a nice, mature buck, whether it's, 150 or 170 inch type buck or something. There's always a possibility of something bigger. So we'll do those general hunts. But what we really, really focus on is the strip. Do the strip a bunch, 13B. We'll do some stuff in 13A this year, which should be really, really good. We're starting to acquire quite a few really awesome guides, and we've always kind of been, we're not going to hire, or we're not going to hire just anybody, but we're also not going to take clients when we don't have guides for them. We're not going to book a client and go, scrounge around and look for just some guide just to take the dude. So we're starting to get quite a few really awesome guides up north, southern Utah and stuff. So we'll do a couple kaibab hunts, 12A and 12B. We'll do 13A this year, and then hopefully quite a few guys in 13B. So that's kind of my hunt is 13B, where I enjoy spending the most time. So.
Talk about your early days up there in 13B and figuring it all out, and some of the hunts that you were able to enjoy and take part in up there, kind of starting out there in 13B.
Man, I've been pretty blessed, going up there and learning it from some of the best guys up there, which I'm very fortunate for. Learning it, and I the strip is a place that you're never going to learn the whole thing. There's so many different places, nooks and crannies, and different types of country, and you're just never going to learn the whole thing. Last year we spent, last year was, man, probably one of my favorite seasons, just because we had some really, really awesome clients in camp, and being a drought year last year, a real good friend of ours, Mark Van Wormer, drew the archery tag, and I spent a bunch of time scouting up there, and really, to be honest, didn't have a whole lot going on. We had some nice bucks prior to the hunt, but we didn't find, we killed 3 bucks last year, and we found them all within just a couple of days of each other on that archery hunt. All in kind of the same area, and ended up getting one of them killed with Mark, spot and stalk. There was a bunch of rain up there last year during the hunt, so sitting water was probably not going to happen. And man, I have actually never guided a buck up there sitting water anyway. So all the big deer that I've killed on the archery hunt have been spot and stalk, but Mark ended up killing his buck at like 18 yards, I want to say, or 17 yards or something. Man, just throttled him, ran downhill and died. And that was like a 215 4x5. Just a super pretty deer, giant front end. Little weak on the twos, but had a big inline on its left side. And it was a buck that we were hunting for, we were hunting for 10 days along with the other two. And then the other two, good friend of ours, and one of our guides got killed. Colton Green killed him opening morning on the rifle hunt. And then, guys, we always talk about how hard it is to draw the strip, and as a non-resident especially. But a guy named Nick Suft, he drew the 13B tag last year with 1 point as a non-resident. Called us up and ended up killing a buck that we were hunting on the archery hunt, and we called Dingy Whopper, just a big, kind of crazy, non-typical cactus buck that we ended up killing him opening evening. After we killed Colton's buck, we went and killed that buck, and he ended up being the highest scoring draw tag buck in Arizona last year. So guy with non-resident with 1 point, killed, arguably the biggest buck that I know about for sure. So, to all the non-residents out there listening, it can be done,
So he obviously drew in the random pool.
Yep.
And that's a perfect example of, changing a few years ago, changing the quota for 5% of the tags go in the random pool and 5% go in the max pool.
Right.
I mean, there's a perfect case right there. And that buck was, how big was that buck?
He was like 243.
Jeez, 243.
Yeah.
Unreal. I mean, and on a drought year too, that buck, was he one of those bucks that, it's always easy to armchair quarterback, but I mean, if that buck would have made it through, would he have been 30 or 40 inches bigger this year, or do you think he was, one of those deer that was pretty much maxed out with everything that he had? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. The buck, I mean, I was familiar with the deer from the previous couple of years. He was he was a big deer, the previous couple of years. He was never that big. Definitely wasn't ever in the 240s. And so I'm not sure, a deer like that turns into a stag, not real sure what the heck he was going to do, the buck that Colton killed, which was, just a big, deep forked, I think he was a 5x6, had a couple splits. That buck could have been something really, really special this year. I mean, he was a big deer last year. He was 202 or something. But, yeah, there's, I think a couple guys that you've had on, Clay and Jason and stuff, I mean, there's going to be a lot of deer this year that are just totally unrecognizable. You just, who knows what the heck's going to turn up. And I think it's going to be kind of a fun year, too, where there's not going to be a lot of deer hitting cameras. I really, these rains that they got today up there, man, I just don't see a whole bunch of deer hitting cameras, Normally those bucks start hitting real hard in, May and June, and you can kind of start seeing what the heck they're going to do and everything. But I think there's, the feed and the moisture up there, there's probably dang near enough to keep them off waters until the monsoons hit. So it'll be interesting to see what actually shows up on camera, because I personally, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot. So it'll be fun. I think it'll bring a little bit of the mystery back to the strip, and guys that really get out there and scout and hunt, kind of like we do. I think are going to be real successful compared to guys that just run cameras all the time,
So you talk about strategy of running cameras. You talk about guys that get out and scout and glass around. In the summer, on a year like this, when you feel like they're probably not going to hit water really hard just because there's water everywhere. How would a guy like yourself? How do you go about just hitting knobs and points and trying to figure everything out? Talk a little bit about your strategy and tactic that you're going to use preseason.
We'll get up there and just, really just start hunting and scouting. Rely, we have some cameras up there. We take a bunch up there with us, and we'll put them on waters with big tracks on them. We, rely a lot on deer tracks, which, in my opinion, and what I was taught by some of those guys up there is, you know, at the end of the day, tracks don't lie. You know, you get a big old deep deer track that, you know, it's going to be a mature buck. You know, you can't tell what he's got on his head, but, you know, you start hunting tracks and find that deer, and, you know, you start finding mature bucks on a year like this, and, man, they're going to be big, you know. So, yeah, we'll get up there, lots of glassing all day, cutting tracks middle of the day, spotlighting at night, and just getting out there. We'll find, you know, we'll have a handful of bucks that we'll want to kill, and we'll start getting some cameras out in those areas, you know, usually after we've already found what the deer is, just to kind of help us keep track of them a little bit, and start really just kind of learning the deer. That's how, you know, last year we were so successful is we knew what those bucks were doing. Knew where they liked to go when they got a little bit of pressure, you know, from hunting them in August. Colton and I went up there and found both those bucks within like 45 minutes of each other in October. Went up there for like 5 days or so, 4 or 5 days, and found both those bucks that we wanted to kill. And then opening morning, we killed one right away. We've been watching them for a few days and got them killed early on Friday morning, and switched gears and went to, you know, flopped on the other side of the road, really just about a mile away, and concentrated on an area where dinghy whopper was always kind of holed up and really liked to bed. And one of the guys picked him up in his bed, you know, late afternoon, and, you know, got him surrounded, and he actually got bumped by another outfit. But we had a bunch of guys up there, and I think that's, you know, one reason why we're so successful up there is that we have a lot of guys, a lot of help. So even though that deer got bumped, you know, he got bumped to another spot where we weren't going to lose him. We had that place surrounded, and got Trevor and Nick in there, and Nick made a couple of awesome shots right at dark, and got that buck in the salt. So yeah, we just kind of, you know, we don't rely on cameras. Cameras only tell you, you know, they only tell you where the deer's watering. Doesn't tell you anything more than that. And you know, but you get out there and you start hunting and following that deer around and trailing him around and seeing where he goes when he gets bumped, and that's when you really start learning about a deer and how, you know, you're going to be successful with clients. You know, anybody can get a big trail camera or a trail camera picture of a big deer, but, you know, you don't know nothing about that deer from that one camera picture. So we rely on, you know, kind of the old school hunting and tracking and glassing, and, you know, last 2 years we've killed two bucks over 200 on opening day. So we'll just, you know, keep doing that. Have a couple cameras in our pockets to put out if we need to, but, you know, we kind of do it old school, and it's been, you know, for us, been really, really successful.
You talk about spotlighting. I'm curious, spotlighting in the summer in the velvet, when you're rolling around at night, do you find that there's a certain time that works, you know, you find more deer than others? And then the next question is, when you do shine and find a deer, I mean, are they just feeding, and will they a lot of them just stand there and feed when you shine the light on them, or are they very, very spooky?
Kind of depends on the deer. You know, and then time of night, it kind of all depends on the moon phase and what times the moon's coming up and all that, which, you know, you just look at charts and stuff on the internet, and it'll tell you kind of the best times. But so I'll usually really try and concentrate on those times. Usually do it most of the night anyway, but really concentrate on those couple hours. And then, man, yeah, it just depends on the deer. Some deer are a little spooky. They don't really like the light and kind of get out of there, and other bucks will stand there 40 yards off the road feeding, you know, like you're not even there. So just kind of depends on the buck.
On a year like this up there on the strip with, widespread moisture, what about the deer being spread out, and how do you think something like that will play into hands of, guys like you that you say a little more old school, don't rely on the cameras as much? Talk about those deer being spread out.
I mean, the more water there is and the more abundance of feed and stuff that's around, definitely going to spread them out. And we have, like I mentioned earlier, we have a great team of guys, and I mean, we have a big camp, Jay. I think last year we had almost 20 guys in camp for, 3 tags, and that just kind of allows us to, especially when deer start getting spread out and stuff, it allows us to have a ton of eyes and be able to spread out as well and cover just that much more ground. That's at the end of the day, that's how big deer die is with the more eyes you got, the better off you're going to be. Those deer just, some of them just flat cannot get away. They'll go over a ridge and one guy will lose them and goes over a ridge and another guy's got them, But yep, deer definitely be spread out. They won't need to be as close to water. There's going to be feed everywhere and every kind of feed you can imagine. It's definitely going to be, there's going to be a lot of really good bucks, I think, but I think it'll be pretty tough hunting still, just because, like you said, the deer are going to get spread out a little bit more.
Bob, I want to take a quick second here and thank the sponsors of the podcast, and I want to remind you guys, the listeners, how much I appreciate your support of this podcast, and also remind you that the sponsors allow me to put and devote as much time as I do to this podcast. So your support of their companies and their products help this podcast, and this podcast is free, will always be free, and we rely strictly on the sponsors for the amount of time that I put in the podcast. So I want to thank GoHunt.com, the gear shop, my friend of 20-plus years, Cody Nelson, is the optics manager, and every day he is constantly taking care of J. Scott Outdoors podcast listeners who call him up. If you have any optical needs at all, binoculars, spotting scopes, tripods, rifle scopes, anything to do with glassing, anything to do with optics, give him a call. He's going to give you a great deal. You can reach him at 702-847-8747. That's extension 2. I want to thank Cody for working so diligently with the podcast listeners. It's just about every day I get a text message or a DM on Instagram how Cody's gone above and beyond and helped someone out there. I also want to thank coues, that's Kuiu, Coues Ultralight Hunting. Coues is the gear that I wear on all of my hunts. You can find out more about Coues and go to their website at coues.com. That's Kuiu.com. Also, Canyon Coolers based right out of Flagstaff, Arizona, not too far from where Bob lives. CanyonCoolers.com. If you use the JScott19 promo code, you're going to get a 10% discount there at CanyonCoolers.com. I also want to thank PhoneScope. PhoneScope is the digiscoping device that I use on my phone, my iPhone 10. All of the digiscoping photos and videos that you see on my Instagram page, those all come from PhoneScope. You can go to PhoneScope.com, use the JScott19 promo code, and you're going to get a 10% discount. And then onxmaps.com. If you go to onxmaps.com, use the JScott19 promo code, you're actually going to save 20%. The Onyx app that you have on the phone is incredible. You can search public versus private overlays there so you can see exactly where you stand. You can use the breadcrumb feature to track either driving down the road or out hiking. You can plot points. You can use the measuring tool. It's just an amazing app. Go to onxmaps.com, use the JScott19 promo code, and you're going to get a 20% discount there at Onyx. Bob, we've talked about kind of northern Arizona. We've talked about some of the units around Prescott, and we've talked about the Strip. But you've got some exciting news with some of your guides that work, kind of southern Arizona and some of the central units, a lot of coues deer hunts and what have you. Talk a little bit about that branch of your operation.
Yeah, so recently a good friend of mine, Joe, his brother Ben lives down in Tucson. He's a fireman. So Ben Brochu, we kind of took him on as a third partner in Shadow Valley, and he's going to be concentrating on a bunch of the coues deer stuff down there. He'll he's a killer. He's a little bit crazy. He does some things that, to be honest, I never would think of. So he does a bunch of that stuff down south. We're super excited. Him and a couple of his friends down there, Jake Lindsay and Andrew Nelson, are going to do some hunts for us. And anybody that, is in the coues world knows about those guys. They kill, year after year, they kill the biggest deer down there. It's pretty phenomenal. So we're super excited to have those guys doing some hunts for us. I think you're going to try and get Ben on here, here in the little while, but can let Ben really kind of dive into what they got going on. But man, those guys, we're super excited about it. We're going to be, doing hunts down there, 33, 37, 36, a couple other ones. We're going to start doing a lot of, going to try and target some deer right here out of Prescott in Unit 8. We've got some big deer on camera that we're going to start targeting with guys. So there's, some guided hunts available up here and, do-it-yourself stuff that we're also going to offer up here for the over-the-counter archery hunts out of Unit 8 for trophy, trophy coues deer and then the trophy stuff down south with Ben and his buds. So, yeah, we're super excited about what this year is going to bring.
That's great. I know Ben, and I've had Jake Lindsay on the podcast a bunch, and I get a lot of great feedback when Jake's on the podcast. He's just an absolute coues deer nut, and
Yep.
I'm glad you guys have been able to pair up down there. And those guys are great guys. I don't know Andrew, but I'm sure if he's friends with Jake and Ben, it's a good crew. So fantastic. And personally, have you gotten much into chasing coues deer? I know you really like mule deer, but what's your do you hunt coues deer very much, or are you pretty much exclusively mule deer yourself?
Me personally, I've guided some coues deer stuff in Arizona and in Mexico, but never hunted them myself. I'm going to try and hunt them this year. We'll see. I'm a little bit torn. I'm going to try and pick up just, hopefully just a leftover tag. Hopefully I get drawn for a 13B tag. I'd love to do that again. But, if that doesn't happen, we'll pick up a tag down south, and me and my buddy Joe, Ben's brother, we're going to go down there and try and kill a coues deer if time allows and schedule and stuff. So we'll see. I might... You never know. I'm like you said, I'm a kind of a mule deer nut. So everybody says I'll get addicted to those coues deer, but we'll just have to wait and see, I guess.
For sure. On an everyday basis, what line of work are you in other than the outfitting and the commercial fishing? What else do you do?
Well, do some construction up here in Prescott. A lot of painting, some remodels. Just kind of that stuff. I do that between, hunting season and fishing. So it's kind of nice. I got kind of 3 different seasons that I can look forward to. Always enjoy doing the stuff here out of town and can be with my family and every day and stuff. And then, but about this time of year, I'm getting ready to go fishing and getting excited for something a little bit different, break up the schedule. And, by that 3rd or 4th week of fishing, I'm definitely ready for that to be over and getting into the hunting stuff. And, by the time I'm done with Mexico in January, I'm ready to start construction and doing this stuff up here. So, pretty fortunate to, have a supportive wife that allows me to to be gone for extended periods, and she's an awesome mom and takes care of our boys, and that's pretty ideal for me.
That's fantastic. You know, that Prescott and Chino Valley, that whole area, I mean, if you've grown up there, the amount of change that you've seen is probably mind-blowing.
It is. It's crazy. You know, and even it is. It's mind-blowing. I'm out in Chino Valley now, and I really like Chino. It's a little bit smaller, not as crazy as Prescott is now, and Prescott Valley. And man, I don't even barely like going into town, into Prescott and Prescott Valley now. The traffic's bad, and it's wild, you know. And Chino's getting pretty popular, and it's going to be pretty big. And I see myself in a few years moving again a little bit further out somewhere, and just kind of getting away from the hustle and bustle of everyday traffic. And man, it's definitely not what it was when I was 10 years old, you know.
Talk about your thoughts on some of the big deer that will come off the strip. I mean, would it surprise you if we see some deer in that, you know, 250, 260, 270 class? You know, talk about some specific deer, maybe that, you know, is there a handful that you know of that would not surprise you if we're in, you know, 250 plus category? Or I always like talking about just throwing it out there and seeing what guys say.
Absolutely. There's gonna be some big deer. There's a couple that I know about. You know, one last year, that the previous year in 2017, he was, you know, probably 240-ish, somewhere in there. And last year, he really probably didn't lose that much as far as inches go. You know, I bet he was still mid-20s, somewhere in there. So a buck like that I think is getting to the prime of his life, and man, I don't know. I mean, I think, you know, a deer like that could put on 50 or 60 inches pretty easily. And then the other couple bucks, kind of the same deal. You know, I've personally seen a couple deer, you know, in kind of the same drought conditions back in, like, 2012 was a real bad drought year. You know, and then 2013, some of those bucks blow up. So yeah, no, it's not going to shock me to see a couple of those auction bucks that get killed in, you know, early August, and I believe a raffle tag too. But it's not going to surprise me if some of those bucks get killed that are 260, 270. You know, I think this year's going to be the year, you know, for those type of bucks, those bucks that are reaching, you know, optimal age, and they're going to have plenty of good feed, plenty of water to go around, and yeah, there's going to be some phenomenal bucks killed up there. We're hoping that we can get a couple of them killed, so we'll see.
Awesome, buddy. Well, it's always great talking to you. I appreciate you taking time in your busy schedule to talk with us and bring some value, and I look forward to you know, seeing you down the road, and hope you have a great fishing season in Alaska and come home safe and hit the ground running, chasing those big deer. And I'll look forward to talking to you after the fall hunts and getting a recap on how everything went. I want to give you a chance to let the listeners know the best way to reach out to you, best way to follow you guys, and I'll also try and link those up in the show notes.
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate you having me on. Guys can, you know, get a hold of us. We have emails and I believe phone numbers as well on our website, ShadowValleyOutfitters.com. Instagram is at Shadow Valley Outfitters, and Facebook as well. You know, we try and answer them, their DMs as quickly as we can, and answer any questions there and emails and stuff. Guys can also call me personally, or text, whatever you're comfortable with, or whatever with, you know, application strategies, or, man, it's pretty easy to pull me away from what I'm doing to talk about deer hunting. So my cell is 928-925-3437. That's also on the website. So yeah, pretty easy to get a hold of us, really. Somebody's always in town, and somebody's always wanted to talk about deer or elk or anything. So we, appreciate all the calls and inquiries from guys, and appreciate the time that you've given us over the last couple of years. So, I think like a lot of people, we're excited for this year.
Awesome, buddy. All right. Well, God bless, and I'll catch you later. Okay, Bob?
Yep. Thanks, Jay. Have a good one.